Next chapter is Judiciary. First, courts related to judiciary. Indian judiciary is not only guardian of the constitution but also active participant in the social revolution. Jawaharlal Nehru. Second, judiciary is the only effective means to ensure limitations on the different organs of the state. A.K. Iyer. There is no better test of the excellence of government than the working of its judicial system. Lord Bryce. Coming to the role of judiciary. First, guardian of the constitution. Example, Keswanandan Bharati case, 1973. Second, promoting rule of law. Example, A.K. Gopalan case on preventive detention law. Third, guardian of fundamental rights. Example, invalidating section 66A of IT Act, Shreya Singhal case. Fourth, maintaining federalism. Example, S.R. Bommai case, 1994. Fifth, checks and balance. Example, electoral bond judgment. Sixth, protecting separation of power. Example, NJAC case. Seventh, setting legal precedents. Example, Vishaka guidelines. Eighth, promoting social justice. Example, Nalsa versus Union of India, transgender rights. Datas. First, total pendency 55.8 million cases across all levels. Source, National Judicial Data Grid. Second, pendency in the Supreme Court hit a historic high of over 93,000 cases in March 2026. Over 180,000 cases have been pending for more than 30 years in districts and high courts. Lower court load 49 million cases are pending in district or subordinate courts alone. That is around 88% of the total. Coming to the sanction strength, uh, 24,631 judges for subordinate courts, approximately 25% of vacancy. Judge to population ratio 21 judges per million people, but the target is 50 per million. Coming to the judicial appointment. Judicial appointments are not mere administrative tasks, but go to the root of the independence of the judiciary, said by Justice M. N. Venkatachalaya. Constitutional provisions. First, Article 124. Supreme Court judges should be appointed by President after consultation with judges of the High Court and Supreme Court as President may deem necessary. Second, Article 217. High Court judges should be appointed by President after consultation with the Chief Justice of High Court concerned, the Chief Justice of India and the Governor of the state. Next, collegium system and its evolution. First, S.P. Gupta versus Union of India, 1981. First judge case. The word consultation in Article 124 subclause 2 and Article 217 does not mean concurrence and only involves the exchange of views. Second judge case. The Supreme Court altered the definition of consultation to mean concurrence. It gave birth to the collegium system, which included Chief Justice of India and two most senior judges of the Supreme Court. Third judge case, 1998. Supreme Court expanded the collegium to include the CJI and four most senior judges of the Supreme Court. Must be a collective opinion. Fourth, NJAC case, 2014. NJAC Act 2014. Supreme Court termed NJAC Act as unconstitutional and nullified it, stating that it posed a threat to the independence of the judiciary. Fifth, Memorandum of Procedure. A revised MOP was sought in 2015 to enhance transparency but remains unresolved. Coming to the issues with collegium system. First, judges appointing judges. It goes against the principle of separation of power and principle of checks and balance. Second, lack of objective merit criteria. There is no standardized evaluation of judgment quality used for selections. Third, regional imbalance. Example, as of April 2026, 7 high courts remain unrepresented in Supreme Court. Fourth, lack of transparency and accountability. Deliberations occur behind closed doors without published minutes, criteria, or reason for selection. Fifth, Uncle Judge syndrome. Allegations of nepotism and closed door syndrome. Example, nearly 30% of the sitting High Court judges have relatives in their legal profession. ADR report. Sixth, vacancy. The collegium system has struggled to keep up with the stagnant vacancies in the judiciary. Seventh, absence of institutional support for the collegium. It remains an ad hoc body. There is no permanent secretariat or support staff dedicated to the task of helping the collegium. Eighth, lack of representation of women. Only 14% of all High Court judges are female. There is currently only one woman justice out of the sitting 34 in the Supreme Court. Ninth, poor representation of marginalized communities. That is, out of 537 appointments to high courts between 2018 and 2022, more than 79% were upper caste, 11% OBC, 2.8% SC, and 1.3% ST. Coming to the way forward, first, finalize memorandum of procedure. Should have clear guidelines like transparency, eligibility criteria, mechanism for complaints against candidates, etc. Second, All India Judicial Services, Article 312, to improve the quality of judges in the lower judiciary. Third, bring the administrative side of the collegium under the Right to Information Act. Fourth, formulate search cum evaluation committee to prepare a panel of eligible candidates. Fifth, second ARC recommendation. It proposed the setting up of National Judicial Council (NJC), which will be responsible for appointment and transfer of the judges of High Court, higher judiciary. Sixth, publishing decision summaries. Publishing the reasons for selection of to improve in transparency. Seventh, international best practices. First is UK. The Independent Judicial Appointment Commission (JAC) includes members of the executive and civil society. Germany. Half the members of federal constitutional courts are elected by the executive and half by legislature. Coming to the basic structure doctrine. The basic structure doctrine acts as guardian of constitutional morality, in ensuring that the fundamental principles of the constitution remains inviolable, said by Justice H.R. Khanna. First, the basic structure doctrine, established in Keswanandan Bharti case 1973, ensures that fundamental features of Constitution cannot be amended even under Article 368. Second, key elements include constitutional supremacy, rule of law, separation of power, judicial review, federalism, and secularism. Coming to the evolution. First, Sankari Prasad case 1951 upheld Parliament's power to amend the constitution, including fundamental rights. Second, Golaknath case 1967 held that fundamental rights are sacrosanct and cannot be amended. Amendments are laws under Article 13. Third, 24th Amendment Act 1971 restored Parliament's absolute amending power and made presidential assent mandatory. Fourth, Keswanandan Bharti 1973 upheld amendment power but introduced basic structure doctrine. Fifth, Indira Gandhi versus Raj Narayan 1975 struck down the 39th Amendment, reaffirmed judicial review as part of basic structure doctrine. Next, sixth, 42nd Amendment 1976 tried to make amendment power unlimited. Seventh, Minerva Mills 1980 invalidated parts of 42nd Amendment, reaffirmed judicial review and balance between Part 3 and Part 4. Eighth, Vaman Rao versus Union of India clarified that the basic structure doctrine applies to all amendments made after April 24th, 1973. Coming to the significance of basic structure doctrine and judicial activism. First, judicial safeguard against arbitrary amendments. Example, Indira Gandhi versus Raj Narayan 1975. Supreme Court invalidated 39th Amendment protecting the PM's election from judicial review. Second significance of BSD is preserves constitutional ideals. Example, democracy, secularism, and federalism. Third, maintains constitutional supremacy, prevents parliamentary majorities from altering the constitution's core structural arbitrarily. Fourth, separation of power. It strengthens democracy by maintaining judicial independence, ensuring that the judiciary remains free from executive and legislative control. Fifth, safeguards fundamental rights. It protects citizens from legislative overreach and authoritarianism. Sixth, ensures judicial independence. Example, Minerva Mills case 1980. Supreme Court struck down parts of 42nd Amendment that curtailed judicial review. Seventh, it upholds rule of law. Example, Kyoto Holohan case, anti-defection law subjected to judicial review. Eighth, ensures constitution evolves with time, allowing for progressive interpretation while maintaining its core structure. Ninth, prevents frequent radical changes that could disrupt governance, preserving the long-term integrity of India's legal and political system. Coming to the criticism of basic structure doctrine and judicial activism. First, judicial overreach. The term is now nowhere mentioned in Constitution. Jagdeep Dhankar argued that the judiciary has rewritten the Constitution without legislative mandate. Second, undermining parliamentary sovereignty. It restricts the power of elected representatives to amend the Constitution to reflect the changing will of the people. Third criticism is vagueness and subjectivity. There is no exhaustive list of what constitutes basic structure, leading to unpredictable and inconsistent judicial decisions. Fourth, the tyranny of unelected. It grants final authority to judges who are not accountable to the public over the laws passed by elected parliament. Fifth, violation of separation of power by acting as super legislature. The judiciary enters the domain of lawmaking, which belongs to the parliament. Sixth, Justice Fali S. Nariman once noted that guardians of constitution have become guardians over the constitution. Seventh, hindrance of social reform. Strict adherence can block radical economic or social reforms that require significant constitutional shift. Eighth, constitutional rigidity. It makes constitution static by entrenching certain values permanently, preventing the nation from evolving with time. Ninth, taking on executive and legislative roles diverts judiciary from its primary function, leading to increased pendency of cases and delays in justice delivery. 10th, lack of expertise in policy matters. Judges may not have the technical or administrative expertise required for complex policy decisions, leading to impractical rulings. Coming to the way forward, first, codifying the basic list. Example, a Constitutional Clarity Act could define the untouchable codes like democracy and secularism. Second, mandate that only a full bench, all 15 plus judges of the Supreme Court, can hear cases involving basic structure challenges. Third, pre-legislative consultation, similar to the French Constitutional Council that reviews laws before they are enacted to avoid conflict. Fourth, judicial restraint guidelines. Example, limiting the doctrine's use to grave existential threats rather than ordinary policy disagreements. Fifth, sunset clause. Introduce a requirement for the court to periodically re-evaluate the necessity of specific features added to the list. Conclusion is the basic structure doctrine should function as a north star in constitutional interpretation, ensuring that it provides consistent direction without obstructing necessary constitutional evolution. Coming to the judicial review. Judicial review means court's power to review the action of other branches of government, especially the court's power to invalidate legislative and executive action as being unconstitutional. Coming to the constitutional provisions regarding judicial review. Article 13. Laws inconsistent with or in derogation with fundamental right. Article 32 and 226. Writ jurisdiction of courts. Article 131 to 134, that is original and appellate jurisdiction of Supreme Court. Article 136 empowers the Supreme Court to confer special leave appeal from any judgment or order of any court or tribunal except for military tribunals and court martials. Coming to the judicial activism, it refers to the proactive role of judges in interpreting and shaping of laws rather than merely applying it as written. So, Justice P.N. Bhagwati said, judicial activism is not an aberration but a necessary tool in the hands of judges to achieve justice and fairness. Similarly, Justice Earl Warren said, the Constitution is not a self-defining instrument, it must be interpreted, and that interpretation is the function of the court. Coming to the historical evolution of judicial activism. First, judicial activism emerged in the UK during the Stuart reign, where the unwritten constitution allowed judicial review, enabling courts to limit parliamentary authority. Second, early traces in India. 1893, Justice Mahmood of Allahabad High Court issued a dissenting opinion, laying the foundation of judicial activism in India. Third, 1960 onwards, activist judges like Justice P.N. Bhagwati and Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer expanded judicial interpretation to protect fundamental rights. Coming to the instruments of judicial activism. First, PIL. Example, Husainara Khatun, first PIL, right to free legal aid and speedy trial. Second, Article 32 and 226, courts have power to review the constitutionality of legislative acts and executive actions. Third instrument is suo motu cognizance. Courts initiate proceeding on their own without a formal petition based on media reports, letters, or social conditions. Fourth instrument is continuing mandamus. Example, Vinit Narayan versus Union of India. Monitoring of CBI investigations in the Hawala scam. Fifth is reading new rights into the constitution. Emergence of rights like right to privacy, right to education, right to healthy environment, etc. Sixth is directing policy formulation under Article 141 and 142. Example, Vishakha Guideline. Seventh, commissioning committees and special investigations. Example, court appointed SIT to investigate black money cases. Coming to the judicial overreach. It occurs when court exceed its legal authority or jurisdiction, making decisions that intrude into the domain of the legislature or executive. So, first, NCERT textbook row 2026. Supreme Court ordered the removal of chapter on judicial corruption from class 8th textbook. Next, Amit Kumar versus Union of India 2026 constituted a national task force to formulate mental health strategies for higher education institutions to prevent student suicide. Third, Shyam Narayan Choksi versus Union of India 2016 made it mandatory for cinema halls to play the national anthem. MC Mehta versus Union of India 2018 arbitrarily invalidated the Rule 115 of Central Motor Vehicle Rules to advance the deadline for BS6 vehicle sale. Next, Tamil Nadu liquor ban case 2017 banned liquor shop within 500 meters of all state and national highways. Next, firecracker ban imposing specific timings and types of crackers during Deepavali. Next is judicial restraint. Judicial restraint is the practice where judiciary recognizes its own limitations and shows deterrence to other organs of the state, that is legislature and executive. Coming to the significance. First, it preserves separation of power. Example, in Almitra H. Patel versus Union of India, Supreme Court refused to issue guidelines for cleaning Delhi, stating it was the municipal body's administrative job. Second, upholds democratic legitimacy. It recognizes that policy making requires a popular mandate, which judges, being unelected, do not possess. Next, the third point in significance is maintains institutional harmony. It prevents constant friction. Fourth, limits judicial adventurism. Fifth, focuses on legal rather than political questions. Sixth, protects the judiciary from public backlash. Example, criticism over NCRT textbook revision. Seventh, respects the presumption of constitutionality, operates on the belief that law is valid until proven otherwise, beyond a reasonable doubt. Eighth, reduce case pendency. Coming to the public interest litigation (PIL), according to Supreme Court in Janta Dal versus H.S. Chaudhary 1993, PIL refers to legal action initiated by to protect public or community interests, including matters affecting legal rights or liabilities. PIL originated in USA in 1960s as a means to promote justice for marginalized group and broader societal concerns. There is no statutory definition. PIL is not explicitly defined in Constitution or any other Indian statute. Coming to the history and evolution in India, Phase 1, Post-Emergency 1970s. Mumbai Kamgar Sabha case 1976, Supreme Court relaxed the principle of locus standi for the first time. Second, in Husainara Khatun case 1979, the first PIL led to the release of 40,000 under trials. Third, Supreme Court sought to reclaim its image as the People's Court. Justice Krishna Iyer in ABSK Sangh 1981 and Justice Bhagwati in SP Gupta 1981 institutionalized the concept. Second, phase 2, 2000 से लेकर अभी तक present तक expanded into environmental protection, good governance, civil liberties. At present, PILs are dealing with issues like AI ethics and digital privacy. Coming to the reasons behind growth of PIL, first, relaxation of locus standi. Example, in SP Gupta versus Union of India case 1981, Supreme Court allowed citizens to challenge public wrongs. Second, epistolary jurisdiction. Judiciary simplified legal entry by treating information communication as a formal legal petition. Third, broad reading of Article 21 to include right to live with human dignity. Fourth, judicial activism post-emergency led by judges like P.N. Bhagwati and Krishna Iyer. Fifth, failure of executive and legislative. Courts step up in to fill political vacuum. Example, Vishaka Guideline 1997. Sixth, role of media and civil society. Investigative journalism and proactive NGOs provided the necessary factual foundation for judicial intervention. Seventh, constitutional mandate to Article 39A serves as a moral driver of PIL. Coming to the significance of PIL, first, expanding the reach of Article 32. It enables proactive citizens to initiate legal proceeding in the broader interest of the people. Example, MC Mehta cases. Second, enhancing access to justice for marginalized community. Example, Naz Foundation case. Third, empowers the judiciary to take suo motu action on matters of public significance. Fourth, catalyst for social and political transformation. Example, Common Cause versus Union of India, legalizing passive euthanasia. Fifth, brings governance accountability. Uh, for example, Vinit Narayan case ensures CBI autonomy, Prakash Singh case on police reforms, and electoral bond case 2024 PIL given by ADR, Common Cause, and others. Coming to the sixth, PILs have broadened the role of judiciary beyond dispute resolution to policy guidance and public welfare. Example, Vishaka Guideline. Seventh, environmental protection and sustainability. Example, MC Mehta versus Union of India. Ban on diesel vehicles. Closure of polluting industries near Taj Mahal. Eighth, PIL lead to innovative judicial principles like continuing mandamus. Uh, First is continuing mandamus, that is continuous monitoring. Second is epistolary jurisdiction, accepting letters, postcard as petition. Third, absolute liability for hazardous industry. Coming to the issues associated with PIL, first, violation of adversarial justice. Traditional common law system rely on two opposing party. PIL turns judges into investigators. Second, misuse of PIL for personal and political gain rather than for public good. Due to this misuse, they are being called as proxy interest litigation or private interest litigation. Third, delays in the resolution due to 5.5 crore pending case and vacancies in the judiciary. Fourth, potential of judicial overreach. Example, ban on firecrackers. Fifth, slowing down pace of development projects. Supreme Court has observed that several NGOs are filing petitions as proxy litigants to settle corporate rivalry. Sixth, lack of proper verification mechanism. Courts sometimes accept PILs based on affidavits or media reports without rigorous verification. Seventh, resource drain on public institutions. Example, mandatory conversion of CNG vehicles in Delhi. MC Mehta case posed sudden challenges for transporters. Eighth, selective judicial intervention. Accusations that courts pick high profile PILs while ignoring systemic issues of the poorest. Ninth, enforcement failures due to executive apathy. Example, bonded labor persists in several industries. Coming to the way forward, first, codify 2010 Supreme Court PIL guidelines into law to maintain strict bona fide checks before admission. Second, impose heavy fines on petitioners whose cases are found out to be for public publicity or private profit. Third, specialist PIL benches in every high court. Fourth, standardizing suo motu cognizance. Fifth, post-judgment monitoring. Create a compliance cell within court to ensure implementation. Sixth, pre-admission screening to check if matter has been litigated or if alternative remedies exist. Seventh, just so South Africa. In South Africa, constitutional courts allow friends of the court, that is amicus curiae, to provide expert neutral input. In USA, use of class action lawsuit, which provide more procedural structure than the open-ended Indian PIL. Coming to the judicial accountability. Judicial accountability is the obligation of judges and the judicial institution to be answerable to for their decision, conduct, and use of resources. It balances judicial independence with the rule of law. It encompasses two dimensions. First, individual accountability. That is responsibility of a judge for personal ethical breaches or corruption. Second is institutional accountability, that is transparency of the judiciary as a whole in matters like appointments, transfer, and case management. Supreme Court judgments. First, K. Veeraswamy judgment 1991 classified judges as public servant under Prevention of Corruption Act but requires CJI approval for prosecution for registering FIR. Second, in 1999, Supreme Court formally adopted the in-house procedure. This allows for a committee of judges to investigate complaints of misbehavior against a peer. Third, Subhash Chandra Agarwal 2019. The Office of Chief Justice of India is a public authority under Right to Information Act 2005. Judicial accountability mechanism in India. First, impeachment under Articles 124 subclause 4 and 215 for proved misbehavior and incapacity. Second, Judges Inquiry Act 1968 to regulate the investigation procedure. Third, in-house procedure, a self-regulatory mechanism adopted in 1999 where a committee of peers investigate allegations against a sitting judge. Fourth, appellate process. appeals, reviews, or curative petitions to higher benches. Fifth, the resentment of values of judicial life, 1997, serves as an ethical guide for judges' behavior in private and public. Sixth, the office of CJI is now a public authority under Right to Information Act. Seventh, open court, that is live streaming. Eighth, e-court transparency. Platforms like NJDC, DG, that is National Judicial Data Grid, holds courts accountable for pendency and disposal rate. Coming to the need for judicial accountability. First, maintaining public trust. That is, accountability prevents the erosion of legitimacy. Second, curbing judicial corruption. Example, Justice Verma case. Third, checks and balances. Prevents the judiciary from becoming a super legislature. Fourth, ensuring transparency in appointment in higher judiciary. Fifth, ensuring timely justice. Judges must be accountable for judicious use of time. Sixth, rule of law. Judges must face consequences for misconduct. Example, Justice Karnan case. Seventh, standardizing judicial behavior. Accountability prevents judge-centric justice. Eighth, improving ease of doing business through predictable and efficient judiciary. Major issues with judicial accountability. First, opaque collegium system. Selection behind closed door without detailed rationales. Second, ineffective impeachment process. No judge has ever been impeached. Third, use of contempt law as a shield against legitimate criticism. Example, Prasad Bhushan case. Fourth, India lacks a specific judicial standards and accountability law to handle misconduct. Fifth, lack of performance indicators to evaluate a judge's efficiency, quality, and attendance. Sixth, secrecy of in-house findings. Reports of internal inquiries are rarely made public. Coming to the way forward, first, National Judicial Commission. Establish a constitutional body with judicial, executive, and civil society members for a balanced appointment. Second, follow the Swedish model where the independent parliamentary ombudsman can investigate complaints against judicial delays. Third, mandatory cooling off period. Enact a mandatory 2-year bar on judges accepting any executive or political appointment after retirement. Fourth, create a statutory Judicial Conduct Commission (JCC) similar to UK or Kenya to handle complaints and recommend penalties. Fifth, make live streaming mandatory for all courts level to ensure that conduct in court is a matter of public record. Sixth, introduce judicial impact assessment to evaluate the efficiency of court processes and individual disposal rates. Seventh, extend the Whistleblowers Protection Act to court staff and lawyers reporting judicial misconduct. Eighth, reform of contempt law. Amend the 1971 Act to remove scandalizing the court and replace it with a narrow obstruction of justice clause. Coming to the judiciary and RTI, major Supreme Court judgments. First, Subhash Chandra Agrawal case in 2019, a 5-judge constitutional bench held that the office of Chief Justice of India is a public authority under Section 2H of RTI Act. It ruled that judicial independence and transparency go hand in hand. Coming to the Secretary General, uh, as Supreme Court versus Subhash Chandra Agrawal confirmed that the CGI holds information regarding judges' assets not in a fiduciary capacity but a constitutional functionary, making it disclosable. Third is Khanapuram Gandaya versus Administrative Officer 2010. It clarified that RTI cannot be used to ask a judge why a particular judgment was passed, as judicial decisions are protected by judicial immunity. Coming to the present position, the Supreme Court and High Courts are recognized as public authorities. Each has a designated Central Public Information Officer and a First Appellate Authority. Next is transparency is now governed by a three-pronged test. First, judicial independence versus privacy versus public interest. Information is disclosed on a case to case basis. Almost all high courts and Supreme Court have integrated with the National RTI online portal, allowing citizens to file requests and pay fee digitally. Next is asset disclosure. Judges' asset declaration are maintained by the registry, while not always proactively published on website. They are accessible via RTI, subject to privacy. Coming to the procedure of impeachment, that is removal. A motion must be signed by 100 MPs of Lok Sabha or 50 MPs of Rajya Sabha and submitted to the Speaker or Chairman. The Speaker or Chairman has the discretion to admit or reject the motion. Third, Inquiry Committee. If admitted, the three-member committee is formed: a Supreme Court judge, a Chief Justice of High Court, and an eminent jurist. Next, the committee investigates proved misbehavior or incapacity. The judge has the right to defense. If the committee finds the judge guilty, the report is tabled. Both houses must pass the motion in same session. Special majority required in each house. Absolute majority more than 50% of the total membership, and special majority, that is not less than two-thirds of the members present and voting. And then presidential order. Upon passage, president issues a formal order of removal. Coming to the major issues with the impeachment process. First, resignation loophole. Judges resign just before the final vote to retain post-retirement benefits and pension. Example, Justice Yashwant Verma and Justice Soumitra Sen. Next, the speaker or chairman can block a motion without providing objective criteria or reasons. The process is all or nothing, with no mechanism for reprimanding misconduct below the level of removal. In-house procedure is toothless and lacks statutory backing. Next, highly political nature. Example, motion against Justice V. Ramaswamy 1993 failed because the ruling party abstained from voting. Next, requirement to finish the entire process in a single session leads to procedural lapses. Next, lack of transparency. Example, confidential inquiry committee proceedings. The multi-layered investigation and debate takes years, during which the judge remains on the bench. Next, no post-resignation inquiry. Once a judge quits, the statutory mandate of the inquiry committee currently terminates automatically. Coming to the way forward. First, statutory continuity. Amend the 1968 Act to ensure inquiries continue despite resignation to establish formal accountability. Next, transparent threshold. Mandate the speaker to provide a reasoned written order when admitting or rejecting a removal motion. Third, graduated sanctions. Introduce a spectrum of disciplinary actions for misconduct that does not warrant full removal. Fourth, time-bound proceeding. Establish strict statutory timelines for committees to prevent political stalling and institutionalized sluggishness. Fifth, post-retirement accountability. Link the retention of full pension and benefits to the final findings of inquiry. Coming to the judicial pendency. The issues of judicial pendency is ticking time bomb. Unless we collectively act to diffuse it, it will explode and cause irreparable damage, said by Justice N.V. Ramanna. Reasons. First, India operates with only 22 judges per million people, far below the Malimath Committee recommendation of 50 judges per million. Second, high vacancy rate. Nearly 35% of the sanctioned posts in High Court remain unfulfilled due to collegium executive delays. Third, government litigation constitutes approximately 50% of all pending cases, with a significant proportion involving interdepartmental disputes that could be settled outside the courtroom. Fourth, the culture of adjournments allows lawyers to stall proceedings for years on minor procedural grounds. Fifth, infrastructural deficits. Many lower courts lack basic digital tools, clerical staff, or even enough physical courtroom to sit. Example, over 25% of the courtrooms still lack dedicated video conferencing setup. Sixth, misuse of special leave petition. Over 90% of the Supreme Court docket currently consists of SLPs rather than constitutional bench matters. Seventh, poor investigative standards and forensic delays lead to repeated retrials or long drawn evidence stages. Eighth, underutilized ADR mechanism. Mediation and arbitration are still seen as optional rather than a mandatory first step in civil suits. Coming to the impact of judicial pendency, first, massive case backlog. Over 5 crore cases are pending across all Indian judiciary, with majority in subordinate courts, around 4.7 crore. Second, erosion of public trust. Push people towards informal systems like khap panchayats. Third, burden on the court system, reducing efficiency and leading to judge burnout. Fourth, weakened rule of law. Justice delayed is justice denied. Example, Bhopal gas tragedy case. Fifth, violation of right to a fair and speedy trial under Article 21. Sixth, prison overcrowding. Under trials constitute 73.5% of the prison population, that is 3.9 lakh. Prisons operate at 131% capacity. Seventh, economic loss. Example, India ranked 163 in contract enforcement in ease of doing business ranking. Eighth, social disruption. Delays in family law cases, that is divorce, child custody, etc., cause mental distress and family instability. Coming to the steps taken, first, e-courts phase 3, focusing on integrated digital courts and paperless filing. Second, 774 fast track special courts are operational for time bound trials of heinous crime. Third, justice clocks installed in 37 High Court for real time public data on case disposal and pendency. Fourth, ADR mechanisms like Lok Adalat, Gram Nyalays, and online dispute resolution. Fifth, interoperable criminal justice system facilitates seamless data exchange between courts, police, jails, and forensic labs. Sixth, Tele Law Program to enable access to legal advice for disadvantaged communities via video conferencing, telephone, and mobile apps. Seventh, Nyay Bandhu Pro Bono Framework to connect advocates with citizens requiring free legal services. Coming to the way forward, all India judicial services to ensure merit based diverse recruitment, that is Law Commission 116th report. Second way forward is deploying AI tools like SUPACE to assist judges in research and automated case file summarization. Third, prioritize legacy cases older than 10 years through daily hearing and dedicated backlog benches uh, given recommended by Malimath Committee. Fourth, reforming the appointment process. Adopt the UK system to bring transparency and balance judicial independence and checks and balances. Fifth, the inquisitorial element. The inquisitorial element. Borrowing the features from Germany or France, where judges take a more proactive role in truth seeking, recommended by Malimath Committee. Sixth, reducing interdepartmental litigation. Use mandatory mediation before filing suits. Seventh, implementing e-court phase 3 for creating integrated digital courts. Eighth, Law Commission of India in its 245th report highlighted the need for doubling the number of judges to address the backlog effectively. Ninth, mandatory pre-litigation mediation following the 162nd Parliamentary Report 2026. Make mediation compulsory for all commercial and family dispute. 10th, establishing regional Supreme Court benches reduces travel cost, eases case backlogs. 11th, setting up Knights Court to clear petty cases like traffic challans. 12th, executive restraint. Element, Implement a national litigation policy to ensure the government only appeals in cases with substantial questions of law. 13th, increasing court working days as recommended by Malimath Committee. Increased court working days by 21 days annually. 14th, enhancing judicial measures. First, increase operational days in higher judiciary. Second, enforce strict regulation on adjournment, that is three adjournments rule. Third, appoint professional court managers for efficiency. Fourth, implement the time specification and annual targets. Coming to the next topic, that is All India Judicial Service. The All India Judicial Service is proposed centralized recruitment system for the subordinate judiciary, specifically district judges in India, modeled after the IAS and IPS. First, first proposed in 14th Law Commission Report 1958. Second, 42nd Amendment Article 312 was amended during the emergency to empower the Parliament to create an All India Judicial Service through a resolution by the Rajya Sabha by two-third majority. Third, All India Judges Association versus Union of India 1992. The Supreme Court directed the centre to establish All India Judicial Services. Coming to the significance of AIJS, first, uniform standards of judicial recruitment, more professional and competent judiciary. Second, open competition brings objectivity and transparency in the selection process. Third, merit based selection of fresh talent. Fourth, improving judge population ratio helps achieve the Law Commission's target of 50 judge per million, currently only 21. Fifth, curbing nepotism, corruption, that is moving away from uncle judge syndrome. Sixth, reducing vacancies. AIJS would conduct exams at regular intervals. Seventh, reducing the pendency of cases. 4.9 crore pending in lower courts. Eighth, uniformity in quality of adjudication. Ninth, social inclusion. Enable representation to marginalized and deprived sections of society. 10th, interstate knowledge transfer. Judges allocated to different states can bring best practices from their home regions to their cadre. Coming to the challenges. First, language barrier. Judges from one state may struggle to understand local language used in district court proceedings. Second, encroachment on state powers, as administration of justice is a state list subject. Third, judicial independence at risk. Currently, High Court controls district judge appointment, Article 233. AIJS can centralize power in National Judicial Service Commission. Fourth, AIJS may fail to attract top law graduates who prefer careers in litigation, corporate law, or law firms due to better opportunities and career growth. Fifth, limited career progression. Majority of the judicial officers reach only district judge level, as High Court elevations favor appointment from the bar, making AIJS less appealing. Sixth, structural issues remain unaddressed. Example, infrastructure gap and systemic inefficiencies like adjournment culture. Coming to the way forward, the regional cadre model to minimize language and cultural gaps. Second, cooperative federalism, developing consensus between center and states through interstate council. Third, language training, mandate 1 year intensive language and local law course for all AIJS recruit before they take charge. Fourth, AIJS should report to High Court Chief Justices to ensure judicial independence remains intact. Fifth, France model. The École Nationale de la Magistrature is a specialized school that recruits and trains all judges through a rigorous national exam, ensuring high quality. Coming to the alternate dispute resolution, ADR. Alternate dispute resolution is a mechanism of dispute resolution that is non-adversarial, that is, working together cooperatively to reach the best resolution for everyone. Mediation for Nation campaign. NALSA and Supreme Court settled over 1.48 crore cases pre-litigation and pending in a single year cycle. Next, National Mediation Conference. The Mediation Council of India was officially institutionalized to regulate mediator standards. Third, the Institution Mediation and Settlement PIMS pre-institution mediation and settlement was expanded beyond commercial suits to include specific matrimonial and property disputes. Fourth, the law minister referenced the Panch Parmeshwar doctrine, India's traditional collective consensus in dispute resolution at a global ADR forum, advocating international cooperation in strengthening ADR. Now, coming to the types of ADR in India, first, arbitration. Number one, a dispute resolution method where neutral third party, that is arbiter or arbitral tribunal, delivers a binding decision after evaluating the case. Second, governed by the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996. Key features: require valid arbitration agreement before disputes arise. Second, the arbitrator's decision is final and enforceable. Coming to the other type of alternative dispute resolution, that is mediation. First, a voluntary negotiation process where a neutral mediator facilitates discussions between disputing parties without imposing a decision. Second, key features. First, party driven and voluntary with no imposed outcomes. Second, the mediator assists in communication and compromise. Third, suitable scenarios. When parties face communication barriers or emotional conflicts. Second, if resolution is priority over legal precedent. Third, to save time, reduce cost, and preserve business or personal relationships. Third type of ADR in India, it is conciliation, a process where a neutral conciliator, often a legal expert or government officer, suggests a resolution to the dispute without issuing a binding verdict. Second, governed by the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996. Third, key feature of conciliation. Conciliators propose solution but do not make enforceable decision. Second, a settlement is binding only if both parties agree the terms. Third, confidentiality ensured under the non-disclosure clause, restricting evidence use in judicial proceedings. The Mediation Act 2023. This is the next topic, the Mediation Act 2023. Parties may voluntarily attempt mediation before filing a civil or commercial suit. Initially proposed as mandatory, it was made voluntary in the final act. Mediation must be completed within 120 days, extendable by an additional 60 days with party consent. Third, a mediation settlement agreement is final, binding, and enforceable in the same manner as a court decree. Fourth, confidentiality. Proceedings are strictly confidential. No audio or video recording is allowed, and what is said in mediation cannot be used as evidence in court. Fifth, Mediation Council of India establishes a central body to register mediators, grade mediation service provider, and promote the practice. Fifth, exclusions. Certain disputes, example criminal offense, tax matters, or disputes against minors, are excluded from the ambit of mediation. Next is Arbitration and Conciliation Act of 1996. Based on UN-CITRAL model law, this act governs domestic arbitration, international commercial arbitration, and the enforcement of foreign award. Section 5 limits judicial intervention. Section 8, courts are mandated to refer parties to arbitration if valid arbitration agreement exists between them. Section 9 and 17 of Arbitration and Conciliation Act provides for interim protection order by courts and by arbitral tribunal itself. Section 34 defines narrow grounds for challenging an award, example, incapacity of parties, invalid agreement, or violation of public policy. Section 36. An arbitral award is enforceable as a decree of court once the time of challenging it under Section 34 has expired. 2015 Amendment. um, Strict timelines introduced Section 29A, mandating that awards be made within 12 months, that is extendable by 6 months. Next, introduced Section 29B for resolving disputes within 6 months without oral hearings. 2019 Amendment. The Arbitration Council of India, provisions for a body to grade arbitral institutions and accredit arbiters. Second, introduced Section 42nd A, uh, making it mandatory for arbitrators and institutions to maintain confidentiality. Next, 2021 Amendment. Courts can now grant an unconditional stay on enforcement of an award if there is prima facie evidence that either the arbitration agreement or the making of the award was induced by fraud or corruption. Coming to the removed 8th schedule, scrapped strict qualification requirement for arbiters, being advocate or judge, allowing foreign and specialized experts to act as arbiters in India. Next is factors driving India's shift towards arbitration in dispute resolution. First, pendency of cases. Over 5.5 crore pending cases. Second, economic liberation. Surge in FDI, cross border transactions, and consequent rise in international business disputes. Third, government policy push. Amendment to Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996. National Litigation Policy and Mediation Act. Fourth, Indian Arbitration Award from IIAC are gaining global recognition. Coming to the significance of ADR. First, reduces pendency and court congestions. Lok Adalat settled over 14.8 crore cases in 2025. Second, cost effective. ODR. ADR platforms reduce legal cost for small businesses and startups. Third, speedy commercial justice. In institutional arbitration, example DIAC MCIA, aims to resolve disputes within a strict 12 to 18-month window. Next is flexibility in procedure. Parties can choose the venue, language, and even the technical expertise of the arbiter or mediator. Fifth, enhances access to justice to poor and marginalized section of society. Sixth, reducing government litigation. Example 2026 National Litigation Policy mandates mediation for all interministerial property disputes. Seventh, promotes ease of doing business. Efficient contract enforcement through ADR encourages foreign and domestic investment, improving India's business climate. Eighth, preserves relationships. Unlike adversarial litigation, ADR promotes collaborative problem solving, helping maintain personal and business relationships. Ninth, India's ADR laws now mirror the Singapore Convention, making it an attractive global hub for arbitration. Coming to the challenges associated with ADR. First, low awareness levels. 54% of the Indians are still unaware of mediation as a viable option. Second, through those Supreme Court limited court intervention in international arbitration in Bharat Aluminium Co. versus Kaiser Aluminium 2012, judicial involvement remains a challenge. Third, shortage of trained professional. Lack of certified full-time mediator outside of major metropolitan hubs. Fourth, high cost of private arbitration. Fees for top-tier arbitrators can sometimes exceed the actual value of the dispute. Fifth, cultural resistance. A litigation-first mindset among lawyers. Sixth, digital divide in ODR. Poor internet access in rural districts prevents the effective use of e-mediation tools. Seventh, inadequate infrastructure. Many court-annexed mediation centers lack private rooms, basic tech, or dedicated in administrative staff. Eighth, delay in council formation. Although the act was passed in 2023, the Mediation Council is yet to become fully functional. Ninth, lack of diversity. Example, less than 15% of impaneled arbiters are women or non-legal industry experts. Coming to the way forward, first, set up a national accreditation board for arbitrators under the Ministry of Law and Justice. Second, amend and update the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996 to address enforcement challenges and clarify procedural rules. Third, strengthen global partnership with Singapore International Arbitration Center, International Court of Arbitration, etc. Fourth, encourage mandatory mediation or conciliation before litigation, especially for civil, commercial, and family dispute. Fifth, promote institutional arbitration by strengthening arbitration center with standardized rule and procedure. Sixth, the Singapore Medal.